ignorance of the law excuses no one. Veni, vidi, vici.
You got me like
Hi there. Today, we're going to discuss formation of conscience. Let's discuss it now. Remember the last time or the last lecture I gave, there is a question that I left. And the question is, are we to follow our conscience even though it's erroneous? Some of you might say, no, it's wrong. You're not supposed to follow it. However, there's a statement that I've given you during the first part that we must follow our conscience even if it places us outside the church or it forces us to be excommunicated, because the highest authority is our conscience. Therefore, we are to follow our conscience even though it's erroneous. Even the church would say that we should not act against contrary to our conscience. But it doesn't end there, because even though we are to follow our conscience, even if it's erroneous, we have a serious obligation to form and inform our conscience. It is like this. Are you aware of the phrase, ignorance of the law excuses no one? It's true, because you cannot simply claim ignorance, not knowing a law or something, because you have an obligation to know the laws of the land. Let us say a student was absent Monday and the teacher gave an assignment to be submitted on Friday. Well, that day or on Friday, the student wasn't able to submit the assignment. Would the teacher excuse the student? The answer is no. Why no? It's because a learner could ask other students whether there is an assignment. It's a student responsibility to know what are the assessments that he missed the time that he was not around, or the assignments that were given when he was not around. So that student is not excused. Same with our conscience. We have to inform and know what is right or the right thing to do in particular situations. And it is important to know what kind of ignorance we possess. So we're going to talk about the kinds of ignorance. There are actually two kinds of ignorance. And if you're familiar with the Latin phrase, veni, vidi, vici, it is a quote coming from Julius Caesar when he won the Battle of Zela and he was proclaiming it to the Roman Senate. Well, the word vici there evolved into the English language and it became invincible. But in simply says that it's not. So vici means conquerable. So this type of ignorance is or cannot be conquered. It's unconquerable. So what is this kind of ignorance? One example to this is when a person is actually mentally ill. The person no longer has the capacity to conquer whatever ignorance he is in. That's why in court cases, if the representative of the defendant was able to prove that the person is mentally ill and mentally incapacitated, we can claim that, or we could excuse the person from any responsibility. And the second type of ignorance is quite the opposite, and it's called vincible ignorance. This is a kind of ignorance wherein you could conquer or you could dispel, you could remove. An example to this is like the example that I have given earlier. If a student wasn't able to submit his assignment on that day because he was not around, when it was given. That is an example of an invincible ignorance. Why is it considered as a invincible ignorance? Because that student could simply ask another classmate whether there is an assignment or not. Or, better, that student could even ask the teacher. There are several types of invincible ignorance. We have the supine, the cross, and the affected ignorance. A supine ignorance is, or a supine ignorance is when a person is aware or is not aware that of this ignorance, but has little effort to dispel the ignorance, but due to laziness, didn't go an extra mile to actually completely dispel his ignorance. An example to this is, let's say a student or student A does not know there is an assignment. He asked his classmate, but his classmate is also not aware if there is any assignments. So he just says, let go of it, and he missed the assignment. See, that is a supine ignorance. You made a little effort, but because you encountered a simple problem, you did not go an extra mile to actually dispel your ignorance. The second kind of invincible ignorance is what we call a crass ignorance. This one, you did not make any effort at all. Like for example, a doctor who encountered a certain illness. He is not really aware of it, but did not make any or did not ask any colleague about it or the problem. So his ignorance towards the illness of a certain patient is what we call a crass ignorance. You made a little effort, or you made no effort at all. So that's the difference between crass and supine. So supine or simple, you made a little effort but did not go an extra mile to really dispel the ignorance. In crass, there is no effort made. And the third one is what we call affected ignorance. This is a kind of ignorance wherein you really intended to be ignorant, so you think that you could be excused from whatever fault it may be. It's like the learner would say, well, I would not ask my classmates, or I would not ask the teacher if there is an assignment, so that I could claim ignorance. So, the problem here is not really so much whether we are ignorant or we don't know whether our conscience is erroneous. Actually, the problem with forming our conscience is, even though we are aware of whether a thing is right or wrong, but we choose to rationalize, to reason out, to justify our mistakes, trying to make ourselves believe that what we're doing is the call of our conscience. So, here, we have to understand that conscience is not something that is automatic. We have to train it by engaging ourselves in activities that will form and inform our conscience. That's it. Goodbye.